The Beer Association of South Africa has urged President Cyril Ramaphosa to lift the renewed ban on alcohol, saying small craft brewers are not coping. I'm joined now by a brewery owner, Apiwe Nxusani Mawela, who is also the first female black brewery owner in the country. A very good afternoon to you, Ms. Mawela. Good to have you with us today. Now, what you are talking about here and what you say you are hoping for is that come the 15th of January, there will not be a renewal of the ban. How likely do you think that will be, considering the fact that we're really seeing an exponential rise in COVID-19 cases?
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate positions that I actually find myself in, where I know people are dying. I mean, I think there was a social media post where people were saying the numbers are turning to names. That I know there are people that I know myself who have been affected, who are in hospital as we speak. It's not something that, I mean, it's not like I'm ignoring the fact, but at the same time, I think it's a fact that obviously as a business owner, I am suffering myself because of the ban. I have obviously employees who are dependent on the business for them to make money to take care of their families. So it is a very, very difficult situation that we find ourselves, where we actually plead with government to try see how do we compromise, where do we find a compromise? Is there a compromise, and what does that look like? I mean, there has to be a place where we can meet and sort of agree to some of the things, so that we look after obviously the COVID-19 and adhere to those regulations, at the same time allow businesses to somehow survive and continue trading.
It really is a very challenging situation, balancing your needs as a business owner and the livelihoods of those who work for you and work with you, with the needs of the country and maintaining health and stability in that front. From yourselves as an organization and the brewing industry, what type of recommendations do you have? What would a middle path, for example, look like?
We would obviously, I think for me, that we need to keep the curfew. I think we noticed when we after the first ban, and then the curfew was also taken off, that we had we saw what happened. And I think for me, keeping the curfew is very important. We can look at only allowing maybe of consumption, like maybe opening up more bottle stores and limiting the on consumption, and try limit obviously the events where people will gather, because we know, we've seen that we have more spikes when people get together and there's more contact between people. But I think we need to look at how do we allow sales in an off, not allowing people to get in a lot of contact. I mean, looking at online platforms, looking at the click and collect, looking at where people can actually purchase without being around a lot of people. For me personally, I think that could be one of the options that we can look at.
And what are your views regarding businesses closing at 8 p.m.? We know that the restaurant industry, for example, has not been very happy with that early closing time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can never. I mean, there is no perfect scenario in this. I think it's one of those things where we all have to somehow compromise to some extent, and look at what is the bare minimum that each industry needs to allow some trade. I mean, I have clients who run restaurants, who are selling my product in restaurants. And I do know for a fact that if they close at 8, half of them will probably say, why do I even bother opening up? But at the same time, we're in a position where I think as a country, we kind of have to look at how do we balance everything? How do we allow some sort of trade? If we have to close at 8, we need to be innovative and say, how do you still sustain a business if you have to be closing at 8 p.m.? What other things can you look at without having to open till 12? So I do think that it's something that those within the industry need to really look at how more innovative ways of still continuing trade, but not compromising the health of the people.
And what happens to beer that has been brewed or crafted that you now cannot sell?
So personally for myself, at my brewery, I have beer in tanks at the moment that is sitting, because obviously what many people don't understand is that our production process is something that happens over time. We are using yeast, which is a living organism that ferments the sugars and makes alcohol and carbon dioxide. So I can't just tell you stop now because we're in a ban. You will start again, I don't know when, So the processes still need to take place. And unfortunately, the product, as it sits in the tank, it's got a shelf life. It can't sit in there indefinitely. And for me, I think that's one of the frustrating things, that situations that I find myself in, that I'm not sure. If we were to get extended on the 15th, till when, and what does that look like? What do I then do with the product that's in the tanks? What do I do with the products that's packaged and sitting in our cold storage? That also has a shelf life, in that, it's one of those difficult situations.
Certainly a very difficult one. But as far as rands and cents are concerned, and as far as the number of people who actually lost their jobs due to the past two restrictions, give us an idea of the impact of the past two lockdowns and I guess this third ban on the alcohol industry.
So I do not have the exact numbers, but I do know people within, knowing personal people that have businesses that have had to close. I was saying to somebody else the other day that I don't even know how I'm still opened. It's by the grace of God. I really don't understand. Like, it's been very, very difficult. There were days when I would walk into the brewery, especially during the second lockdown, where I would just break down and cry and say, you know what, I've worked to this far. I've put my life savings into this brewery. I've sacrificed so much for this business. And there's people who are obviously dependent on me, who are looking up to me to say, Apiwe, what's going to happen? And to then see it, watch it just going through my fingers and feeling so helpless, knowing there's nothing I can do but wait and see what happens. It's a very emotional, draining, very I know people who've had breakdowns, who are going through depression. I know people who have lost their life savings in the industry. People who have had to close, and the sad part is you can't sell your equipment because we're going to sell it too, so you can't even recover some of your costs. So it is very and with the third ban, the current one we're on now, it's even the people that have somehow, like myself, survived the past two. It's every day I ask myself, like, how is it possible? And that's why for me it's very important to at least after the 15th, if we can be allowed some sort of trading to continue to I think for me important keep lights on and see how do we obviously it won't be as per pre-COVID. I understand we through a pandemic at the moment. I cannot expect life to be what it was before, but for me it's more just to hang in there up until we all ride this wave as a country. But to do that, I need some income. I need something to keep lights on, something to at least all of us to be able to buy food and continue living up until I think we wait for the vaccine or whatever other means of continuing out post this COVID.
I must say, Apiwe, we wish you all of the best, and so many who are finding themselves in your situation right now. And you mentioned depression there, and that is also a huge problem that we're experiencing for so many South Africans who've lost their livelihoods. They just don't know how they're just going to be making it through. But we will wait until the 15th of January when the President makes his address to see what the fate will be for the brewing industry.